Hello, let's start off with images that I took at a square called the Burg. It's located in the heart of the city. In fact, it is only a stone throw away from Millsbridge, around which the earliest settlements were built. I showed you already. At least as early as the 9th century, what started with a fortified encampment, the Burg became and probably will, if not at least symbolically, always remain the power center of Bruges. The white Renaissance building on the left, what I zoomed in on at the start of this video, used to be the civil register. And next to it on the right is the town hall. The town hall is built in the 14th century and is one of the oldest of the Netherlands. I never actually realized there is a museum on the first floor, so unexpectedly I went in there for the first time not too long ago. On the right side of Town Hall there is the Basilica of the Holy Blood, with underneath Basilius Chapel. The initial plan was to look for things like this. Blocks, reliefs embedded in the walls of some houses in the old city, or among the many blasons decorated in the main Catholic churches. And I hope you will forgive me my usual clumsiness with the camera. Sometimes I almost forget the thing. This is the ceremonial hall. Originally two different spaces, but in 19th century the partition wall was removed, the vaulted ceilings were extended and murals were added depicting important historical events of the Flemish medieval era, one of them speaking of exactly that which I initially intended to find. Yeah, so in this episode I want to share a little something on this Order of the Golden Fleece. It is one of those historical clubs in which the elites of the world join together to, through ritual and oath-taking, forge their alliances. Although this particular order has been initiated in the late Middle Ages, it still exists to this day with an Austrian and a Spanish brand. I will leave it to the curious among you to look into the modern version and what that is about. Instead, I want to look a bit at some of the symbols used by the order, since I currently live in Bruges, where the inception of this order or brotherhood took place more than half a millennium ago. First, a brief look at Greek mythology, more in particular, what is the origin of the central symbol of the order, the Golden Fleece. This Golden Fleece belonged to Chrysomalos, a ram that was the offspring of a Thracian princess called Theophane, and Poseidon. Poseidon abducts her, changes her and himself into sheep. He rapes her and leaves her with child or lamb, I should say. This Chrysomalis with the golden fur was able to speak, swim and fly. At the time, Boeotian king Athamas' first wife Nephele asks Poseidon or Hermes, the stories differ on that, to send Chrysomalis and save both her children from the wrath of Athamas' second wife, Aino. Halfway their flight eastwards, the girl, Helle, falls off the ram into the water at a place which is now called Helle's Pond, while the boy Phrixus makes it to Colchis. There he sacrifices Chrysomalis and offers its golden skin to Aeetes, king of Colchis. Phrixus later has a son called Argos, and with help of Athena, Argos will build the ship Argo and eventually help Jason on his quest as one of the Argonauts. I already mentioned Jason and the Argonauts in my series on the compasses. He leaves his Magnesia to go steal the legendary Golden Fleece and sails to Colchis. And with the help of Princess Medea, Jason completes the task put on him by her father, King Aeetes. He needs to yoke 2 fire-breathing brazen bulls, the tauroi chalkeoi, and uses them to plow the land. He then sows dragon teeth, given to Aeetes by Athena, and outgrows an army that Jason has to now defeat. Thereafter, he beheads the guardian dragon and steals the precious ram skin and sails away with the Argonauts, taking Medea along with him. Side note here, the bulls seem to me to be a hint to the automatons built to sacrifice by burning. Interesting work on that by scholar Adrian Mayer. So far a short introduction to the myths behind the fleece, and now fast forward to Bruges, beginning of the 15th century. Okay, so the inception of the Order of the Golden Fleece, or as it was called in French, the language of the aristocracy here, Ordre du Toison d'Or, dates back to the 10th of January 1430. The founding is generally regarded as a political move by Philip the Good, Duke of the oldest house of Burgundy, ruler of Flanders and a bunch of other lowland regions. He did this supposedly in honor of his third marriage, this time with Isabella of Portugal, which took place on the very same day. This marriage would have a huge and particular influence on the development of Bruges as a trade and financial center of Europe. Into this Order of the Golden Fleece, he knighted a select group of high nobles from the houses Valois, Flanders, and Burgundy. The number of members was initially limited, with as much sources giving us as much different numbers on that. These knights received several privileges, such as never having to appear for a worldly court, for only their brethren knights were qualified to judge over them. A Toisonist, like these men were called, owed a strict allegiance and were not allowed to join any other order unless he himself was the head of it. Membership was for life, and one could only be excluded from the brotherhood after conviction for breaking a strict code of conduct. In Flanders, there was one case when Philip ordered the execution of 2 members he had accused before of high treason. They were beheaded. I would say this can count as a dismembering. Thus, Philip aimed to reinforce loyalty from the nobles, ruling that a knight was never to abandon the field of battle as long as banners were waving. He is famed to this day for the unification of the lowlands of Western Europe. The knights also received a papal boon, and were thus allowed to lead religious services in their private chapels in their own chosen time. They had portable altars to their disposition and were to be addressed with Monseigneur. They had the obligation to aspire the virtue of knightlyhood, setting the quest of Jason as an example of bravery. Hereby, they swore to defend the Roman Catholic Church as Islamic forces of Mehmed the Conqueror were approaching from the east. The virtues and courage of the Argonauts were set as an example to the nobles of the order and were to be pursued and equaled as much as possible. It is not really clear how to categorize the Order of the Golden Fleece, although they existed out of aristocracy and had received considerable privileges from the church. They are not like any other Christian militia, like we have the Teutonic Knights or the Malta Knights, or any order of the Templars who had already perished by then. The leadership of the order was consigned to members of the Burgundy bloodline only. Its foundation was a very personal matter for Philip, as he aimed for revenge on the French royals of the House of Valois for murdering his father, John the Fearless, while meeting in an attempt of reconciliation with the French Dauphin, Louis de Prud'hon. This all took place during the 100 Years' War. France was at war with the English and was internally a stage for rivalry among noble houses of Valois and Burgundy. John the Fearless rebelled against Charles VII and the Dauphin and sided with the English, meaning that for Philip the Good of Burgundy to be using the Golden Fleece as an emblem of his order, a fleece which was only to be worn by royals, was a provocation, a slap in the face of the Valois of France. On a side note, it was Philip the Good whom, during the siege at Compiègne, arrested Jeanne d'Arc, after which she would eventually be sold to her executioners. I took a look at Georgia to answer a few questions, more clues to explain Philip's choice for Jason's legend. Idolization of the ancient Greeks, maybe, or was it the same avarice that had driven Jason to the land that was known for its fabulous amounts of gold? There have been a number of studies, I imagine, that are all about locating the true place of origins of the myth of Jason, described by Homer in the Odyssey. I chose this one, a modern field investigation of the mythical gold sands of the ancient Colchis kingdom and Golden Fleece phenomena. 25 years of research in the South Caucasian region of West Georgia leads to the conclusion that the fleece definitely refers to an ancient method of mining alluvial gold by using sheepskin dunked in the flow of a river so that it will capture the larger particles of alluvial gold in it. Those who follow me a longer time may remember the myth of the hairy golden ants, larger than camels, as described by Herodotus. I will leave a link to that story in the description. In the introduction of this paper, they touch on a rich Colchian past in which significant metallurgical skills and sophisticated farming inventions developed during the late Bronze Age, centuries before the Greeks started settling there. The oldest gold mine uncovered dates back to the Neolithicum. The oldest ethnicities, like the Svan, and others have been in the region at least 2,000 years. These Georgian minorities speak the local Kartvelian of the southern Caucasus, unrelated to Indo-European. Some scholars say Colchis is the cradle of metallurgy. One claims iron and steel were already developed here around the 14th century BC by a local tribe called the Chaldi. Another proposes the Greek word kalkos, meaning copper, as well refers to this tribe. Bronze Age burial sites found in southern Georgia and belonging to Iberia, a kingdom next to Colchis, show high levels of skill with both ferrous and non-ferrous metallurgy. The traditional way to fish alluvial gold with a sheepskin is still performed in some villages, the Zaneti Mountains, Interestingly, in their mythology, a ram's head appears, or a ram's bird, a chimera, with the body of a bird and the head of a ram. A number of golden idols uncovered may be representations of this golden ram bird. So Aneti region has yielded a substantial treasure trove of artifacts and coins. The Colchians used a silver coin called the White Colchian. The fame of Colchis being a rich country has not brought it any luck. The wealth and their location on the map has caused many wars and destruction. That, and of course the fact that the Caucasus is a natural hazard-prone region. For nobles who had the fortune of being taught the Greek histories, Colchis must have been fascinating, to say the least, and I reckon they knew the South Caucasus very well. The trade hub phases would have been known to merchants for considerable trade of precious metals.